This is not the video I had intended on making this week. This started out as a simple doctor's video. I had gotten a couple of emails from people asking about heart health, and as you know, I'm not a doctor, so I don't give medical advice. But what I do is I'll compile videos from doctors that are licensed to give medical advice, and I compile them into videos to help people learn about topics from all different sources that they want to know about. So I decided to make a video about heart health. And as I was researching, this headline jumped out at me. Keto diet is not healthy and may harm the heart. Now I've seen, and you probably have too, many headlines like this over the years, and you know where most of that normally comes from. But this one kind of jumped out a little because it was from Harvard Medical School. So let me read you just a little bit of that article right now. Ketogenic diets appear to lower blood levels of triglycerides but raise levels of artery clogging LDL. The short-term benefits fade over time. Then it states that keto lets people consume large amounts of leafy greens and that the vitamin K in those foods may interfere with the anti-clotting drug warfarin. Well, maybe if you're on keto and you reverse health conditions, you don't need warfarin in the first place. How about that? Let's start there. But they don't. So I wanted to dig just a little deeper into this. And what transpired was a journey down a rabbit hole into the depths of lies, deception, corporate greed, the entire industry's plan to keep people sick so that they can keep them as customers. Because whether it's the pharmaceutical company or the doctors, if you stay sick, you're a customer for life. What I uncovered are secrets of how, through their influence, record profits could be realized at the expense of you and I. I believe that the ketogenic diet is the best way of eating in the world. It has helped people realize so many of their health goals, reverse medical conditions, lose weight. It's helped me lose 75 pounds and reverse a lot of health conditions that I had no idea were even caused by my diet, even though I've been kind of in the field for about 30 years. And through my research, personal experience, this is what I believe to be true to the best of my knowledge, but I'm always trying to learn. I'm always doing research. And through the research that I've done, and my beliefs based on past experience, I believe this is the best way to eat. If that ever changes, I'll definitely let you know, because I'm always learning. And I always want to learn. There's a quote that I absolutely love that says, live as if you were going to die tomorrow and learn as if you're going to live forever. And that's just great advice. Because if you're not learning, you're not growing. If you're not growing, you're dying. People sometimes get to a place where they're just complacent and satisfied. I'm never satisfied. I always want to learn, and although I don't think I'm a great teacher, I like to teach as best I can. Knowledge is power. So who are you going to listen to get your knowledge from? The American Diabetes Association, the American Heart Association, the food pyramid, the government? I would urge you to study these things for yourself, and I want to dive into these dark secrets that I've uncovered while I was doing research for that video, right after this. Keto diet is not healthy and may harm the heart. So after reading that, it's pretty bad, right? So I decided to go and pull up the full study, which is found here and published by the European Society of Cardiology. So let's dig into this just a little bit. The ketogenic diet presents a potential for rapid, short-term body mass, triglyceride level, and blood pressure reduction. So what's bad about that? But they keep going. It says there's still scarce evidence comparing ketogenic to the Mediterranean diet. Could that be possible because they don't do any studies on the ketogenic diet? Because there's no money to be made in researching the ketogenic diet? This study says the Mediterranean diet has emerged as the most universal dietary patterns for cardiovascular prevention. But if you take a deep look at the Mediterranean diet, it's actually a very meat-heavy diet. Now they have some olive oil and they have some other things, but it's particularly a meat-based diet. This also says there are possible advantages of the ketogenic diet, including triglyceride level reductions, diabetes medication demand reductions, and appetite decrease. And it says since in the last 4 years, the state of knowledge about ketogenic diets have improved. Body mass has definitely gone down. It helps people lose weight, which helps also reverse a ton of health conditions, including conditions that people may not even know are to be attributed to the keto diet. Body mass indexes are down, weight is down, and the incidence of diabetes in ketogenic diet patients is down. So what could be so bad about this? In my opinion, the thing that can be so bad about it is that nobody can make money from this. The pharmaceutical companies can't, the doctors can't, and in this study, it says that the lipid profiles have gotten so much better. Obviously, the triglycerides are down. Now, the LDL and HDL are up, but as we've seen before, studies have shown that that has nothing to do with longevity, but it has everything to do with greed, corruption, pharmaceutical company profits, doctors' personal profits. This study actually says results of the high versus low meta-analysis reveals that cardiovascular disease is lower in ketogenic diet patients. However, if you're still on drugs like warfarin and you're eating leafy greens which contain vitamin K, there could be a problem. But if you're on the ketogenic diet and you've helped these conditions, why are you still taking these medications? So after digging into that, how did the Harvard study come up with their headline? Their sensational headline that basically says if you eat the keto diet, you're going to die. Now, does this study say that? How did the Harvard study conclude this? And why did the Harvard study conclude this? And listen, all of these I'll put a link to down in the description so that you can read them for yourself. And make sure you watch this until the end for the darkest secret that I uncovered while researching this. Now back to the Harvard study for just a minute, where they said the artery clogging LDL. Hasn't that been disproven? How about this Ohio State study and what it had to say? The basics of this study is highlighted right here in purple. The presence of LDL is considered an indicator for the potential risk of heart attacks or coronary diseases, but studies have shown that about 75% of patients who suffer heart attacks have cholesterol levels that don't indicate a high risk for such an event. And this study by the British Medical Journal that actually looked at 68,000 adults. I want to read a little bit of this and show you what that concluded. This study concluded that the elderly people, which in this case they concluded were 60 years old and older, with high LDL cholesterol actually lived longer than people without high LDL cholesterol. So how do you explain that? You can explain it by saying that LDL is not the problem, but other factors are indeed the problem. And by other studies that have come out, we know that that problem is actually inflammation. And this excerpt from Harvard mentions specifically the drug warfarin. So I wanted to find out who manufactures warfarin, because it was mentioned specifically for some reason. What reason is that? So I found out that there's two manufacturers of warfarin. The first is Upshur Smith. So then I started looking at Upshur Smith, who was recently bought out by Bora Pharmaceuticals for $210 million. But in 2023, they made $420 million. So why would they sell to another company for half of their revenue from the prior year? So I researched Upshur Smith and its possible ties with Harvard, and I reached a dead end on that until I got a lot further down the rabbit hole, and I'll tell you about that in just a little bit. So then I started looking at Bristol Myers Squibb, the other manufacturer of warfarin. So Bristol Myers Squibb is a $45 billion company, a much bigger company. So I started looking at them and I found this about warfarin from 2020. So Bristol Myers Squibb would like to inform you the sale and distribution of all strengths of Coumadin will be continued in the United States. It's voluntary and due to an unexpected manufacturing issue that cannot be resolved. The discontinuation of this product happened on April 24th of 2020. So the good news is they had another drug waiting in the wings, and that drug is called Eliquis. Eliquis is the drug that they recommend all their physicians now prescribe instead of warfarin. So manufacturing issues. There were a lot of manufacturing issues then, until I ran across this, an article from 2019 from CNN. And this article states that the most popular blood thinner, warfarin, no longer recommended for AFib cases because, as they had known for many, many years, it was causing bleeding issues. The side effects far outweighed any type of good that this medication could provide. And so, like many medications, before warfarin and after, even though the pharmaceutical companies are making great money on it, the risks far outweigh the benefits of the drugs. So now they're recommending NOACs. And what's an NOAC? Oh, it's Eliquis, conveniently. Eliquis is up to 75% more expensive than warfarin was as well. So the pharmaceutical company's profits could go through the roof with this. I'm going to link this down below so that you can read it, just so you know exactly what's going on. But what's going on is record profits for the drug companies. So then I started looking at warfarin itself. Warfarin was used to kill rodents up until the 1950s, and then it was okayed for human use in 1954. But then over the years, the side effects far outweighed any benefits that this drug could have for the average person, for the person that really needed the drug, not just prescriptions for just about anybody. So the studies in 2019 said this drug was not recommended anymore. When this article was released, warfarin was still available, but the tides had already turned, pushing Eliquis. It says that Eliquis was better for strokes, better for deep vein thrombosis, better for heart attack patients, better for congenital heart defects, and there we go. But I still hadn't found the connection between Harvard University and either one of these drug companies. So I went to Google and Googled Harvard donors list. I thought maybe Bristol Myers, maybe Upshur Smith were donors. But when you Google donors to Harvard Medical School, this is the list that comes up. And neither one of those companies were there until I dug down to about the third page of Google and I found the actual list. And look at some of the names on this list of donors. So buried deep within the internet is this campaign honor roll. The people that donated $20+ million, including the Warren Alpert Foundation and many others. $10 to $19.9 million. And there's a lot of anonymous donors on here. So could one of the drug companies be an anonymous donor? They could most likely be, because they donate the money, but they don't have to reveal exactly who they are. There's another anonymous donor. There's a lot of estates on here. There's a lot of drug companies, including Johnson & Johnson. And although they try to hide it, if you dig deep enough, you can find all of these things. 13 anonymous donors between $1 million and $5 million. Bill Ackman, maybe you've heard of him. Maybe you've heard of the American Diabetes Association, the American Cancer Society, the American Heart Association. All of these are big donors to Harvard University. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. If you want to look at something really, really wild, Google the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and find out some of the things with regenerative farming and factory farms that they're involved in, and see what you think about that. And think of why they might be donating to Harvard University. And then buried deep in here, between $500,000 to $999,000, is the American Heart Association. We mentioned them earlier. There's also anonymous donors. There's a lot of medical societies. And then just keep scrolling down just a little ways, and you'll see the category between $100,000 to $499,000. Which also doesn't mean that they aren't named here, and also could be named as an anonymous donor. And you never know. So Upshur Smith is nowhere to be found, but guess who is? If you keep scrolling down just a little bit in this category, right there in black and white. So do they have vested interest in Harvard University? Absolutely they do. And if you look down a little farther, there's another rabbit hole that I could venture into right down there at the bottom, the Coca-Cola Company, the sugar manufacturers. So we've already determined that Bristol Myers Squibb's warfarin drug was discontinued. So what gives? What gives is that Bristol Myers Squibb's alternative to warfarin and what doctors are taught to prescribe now is Eliquis. Bristol Myers Squibb has made $69 billion on Eliquis, including $12.2 billion alone just last year. And then I dug a little bit further into who owns Bristol Myers Squibb. Here's a list of the majority owners. Maybe you've heard those names before. So Vanguard, BlackRock, JP Morgan Chase, 48% of the entire Bristol Myers Squibb business is held by the top 25 shareholders. So they probably have a lot of say in what goes on. And their share prices were down 30% last year. Does that tell you anything? So Bristol Myers Squibb donates to Harvard University. So I would say Harvard probably has a little bit of an expectation by their donor to put in a good word for them, so to speak. But how does that translate down to the average person going in to visit their doctor? This is the shocking secret that I found once I got to the bottom of this pile and almost to the bottom of this rabbit hole, which I'm still digging into. I just wanted to present this information for now. But even before warfarin was discontinued, I found this article. This is the shocker. I had no idea that doctors could get paid for prescribing certain drugs. Xarelto and Eliquis, they were the top for doctor payouts in the last year. And guess what? Upshur Smith has a drug just like Eliquis that they now recommend for their patients that were on warfarin. So doctors can get trips. They can get money and compensation, not necessarily as direct checks, but more as a thank you for prescribing our drugs to our patients or your customers because they stay sick and you keep feeding them medications to not fix the problem, but to manage the problem. Because by managing, you're a customer. You're a customer for life because you're never going to fix the problem by taking a pill to manage symptoms when the root cause of the disease is not fixed. If you're interested in this topic, I will link a book down in the description, which is how I first started researching all these things, by Dr. Berry. Lies My Doctor Told Me. I'll put a link to that down there. Leave me a comment if you're interested in things like this. I really feel strongly that I want to do a documentary that starts way back in the 1800s and follows not only the food pyramid, but the pharmaceutical companies, the government, and a lot of other corporations that I've been researching. I'd really love to do something like that. Let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. I love doing my cooking and recipe videos. That's what I really love. But when I come across information like this, I feel like I want to share it as well. If you haven't seen my doctor videos, I'm going to put a link down in the description, and I'll put a card up at the top also, so you can check those out next. But it's a lot of good information that I try to compile together just to present the information in a good way from people that are licensed to give medical advice. Please let me know if you want more videos like this in the future. I hope it's been as eye-opening to you as it was to me once I started digging into all this. I appreciate you taking the time to watch. I hope you've learned something, and I'll see you in the next video.